Did Eve have a belly button? What struck me about this question is it wasn't did Adam and Eve have a belly button. It was did Eve specifically have a belly button. So we don't care about Adam's belly button. So so the short answer to this is that nobody knows if Eve had a belly button or not. The important implications of this question is why it's a popular question or why people are interested in it. Some argue that Adam and Eve had belly buttons based on the fact that we have belly buttons now. So that would be kind of the argument. We have it now, so you'd expect Adam and Eve to have it. And then a lot of people will use that as a part of their argument or a part of their case for a form of old earth creationism, believing the earth was, still being Christians, but believing the earth was billions of years old. That's part of their case, is that they would expect Adam and Eve to have belly buttons as well. Others would argue for no belly button based on the assumption that God created Adam and Eve as adults. And this is often a part of the case for young earth creationism, that Adam and Eve were created as adults, and therefore, since they weren't born, don't need belly buttons. And so they don't. They're the only two people who ever didn't have belly buttons. My guess on the subject would be I would believe that they did have belly buttons because a couple reasons. Number one, God would have created them in a completely aged state. So he would have made them theoretically just as all humans are made, just in their aged form as adults. And so he would include every part of the body that they would have had if they would have grown up, even though they didn't grow up. A second reason is that I believe it, or I would believe that, is that God's creation doesn't have to be purely functional. So he can create parts of our body and other parts of the world that don't have a specific function, and that's perfectly fine to do. A good example of that might be our appendix, that we don't know what the function of that would be. And then a third reason that I would go for belly buttons is that it's possible that there's some unknown use for the belly button after birth that we don't know about, similar to the appendix. There could be a use for it that we don't know about. So for any of those number of reasons, I would guess that Adam and Eve do have belly buttons, but nobody knows.
So a follow-up question to that is not about belly buttons, but about what you said about old Earth versus young Earth.
Yeah.
Is there biblical support? I know people have their own opinions on that, but I mean, what is there biblical support for either one or the other?
Yeah, that's a bigger question, young Earth versus old Earth creationism. I'll give you a little bit now. There's biblical support for both, honestly. And so you can definitely be a strong and faithful Christian. There are many strong and faithful Christians that hold the old Earth view and the young Earth view. I myself, and traditionally Calvary Chapel, holds the young Earth view of creation. The reason why you can hold both is that Genesis is primarily, or the beginning of Genesis is primarily a poetic account of God creating the world. And the emphasis is on God creating the world. The emphasis is not on how or when God created the world. The emphasis is on that God is the one true God is the one who created the world, and he created humans special in a particular way after his image. And so within that description, there's plenty of room for timing. And so it could easily be a older Earth, and that wouldn't mess up the reading of Scripture a ton. That wouldn't mess up any of our faith at all. The reason why I hold on short, without getting into the specifics, because that would take too long, maybe I can get into the specifics on a different day, but the reason why I would hold to, just real quick on young Earth creationism, is I think it's the easiest reading of the text. And I don't think it's incompatible with archaeology that dates back longer, because I think that God could create the world in an age state, just like Adam and Eve. And so I think it fits fine with archaeology pointing to the world being older. And then the easiest reading of the text would be a young Earth view. But that doesn't mean that's the case either. But I feel pretty good about that approach. But there's definitely good Christians on both sides. I'm happy to go into more details about the minutia of the different arguments on a separate date. And there's different forms of each as well, explaining the time gaps or the time that's not accounted for. Young Earth creationism, I'm going off on the tangent. Young Earth creationism usually takes its dating based on genealogy, and it looks at the lists of who begot who in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and just kind of counts the generations back to get a broad guess of the Earth being usually like 7,000 to 15,000 years. 10,000 is a popular number, but just generally in that range, years old. That's the approach of the young Earth creationism to identify the age of the Earth, typically. And then old Earth creationism basically says, hey, the Bible doesn't address it specifically, and so we can just look to archaeology to determine that, and astrology and other sciences. And then based on those general sciences, date the Earth the same way that the large majority of the scientific community dates it. So my approach is I kind of like to reconcile those two by saying that the science is probably correct and that God dated the Earth that way when he made it because of many reasons, similar to the belly button arguments. So that's my approach. So I don't see there's any conflict with reading the Scripture or with modern scientific approach to the subject, personally.
But you said astrology. You meant astronomy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Astrology too. No.
Okay.
Yeah, astronomy. Thank you.